Welcome to the debate. Imagine you find like a gold ring, right? And when you put it on and twist the band, you become completely invisible.
Total anonymity, no consequences at all?
Exactly. You can steal whatever you want, you can ruin your enemies, you can, bypass every law in existence, and absolutely no one will ever know it was you,
Wow.
right? So, do you still follow the rules or do you break them to get ahead? Today, we are looking at a really fundamental question about human nature. Is justice actually good for your soul, like something that brings genuine happiness? Or is it just a heavy chain we wear because we're afraid of getting caught?
Yeah, and this tension sits at the very heart of the early books of Plato's Republic. We are looking at the clash between Socrates and his primary challengers, Thrasymachus and Glaucon. It is basically a debate about what happens when you strip away the police, the prisons, and the societal pressures. What is the actual value of doing the right thing?
I will be representing the Socratic perspective today, arguing that justice is the ultimate excellence and harmony of the soul, desirable entirely for its own sake.
And I will be representing the Thrasymachus and Glauconian view, arguing that justice is merely a pragmatic compromise of the weak, and that injustice, well, when you can get away with it, is inherently more profitable.
So let us lay our foundations. From the Socratic perspective, justice is not this burdensome duty that we simply suffer through to maintain a good reputation. It belongs to the highest class of good.
Which is a pretty massive claim.
It is. But the underlying logic relies on the concept of function. Everything in the universe has a proper function. The function of an eye is to see. The function of a knife is to cut. If a thing performs its function well, it has excellence.
So you are applying the concept of a tool's function to a human being?
Precisely. If we look at the human soul, its proper function is to deliberate, to make choices, and to live. Justice, then, is not some external rule arbitrarily imposed on us. It is a specific internal excellence of the soul itself. Therefore, a just soul is functioning optimally. It lives well and is genuinely happy. An unjust soul is essentially malfunctioning. It lives poorly.
But that assumes...
Wait, just to add one more thing. Furthermore, when we look at true professions, like medicine, for example, they always act in the interest of the subject. A doctor practices for the health of the patient, not themselves. Justice operates the exact same way. It is the health of the soul.
Okay, I hear you, but I come at it from a totally different way. The opposing perspective views justice not as an inherent excellence, but entirely as a pragmatic compromise.
A compromise?
Yeah, think about human beings in a state of nature. The absolute best scenario for anyone is to commit injustice and get away with it. To take what you want, when you want it, without limitation.
But obviously no one can guarantee they will always be the strongest.
Exactly. And that leads to the absolute worst scenario, suffering injustice without the power of retaliation. Because the pain of being a victim far outweighs the pleasure of being the aggressor, people eventually get tired of the chaos.
So they settle.
Right. They agree to a middle point. They create laws. People only act justly because they lack the sheer power to be completely unjust. Justice is literally just the name we give to the chains of the weak.
That is a remarkably bleak view.
But if you look at the world honestly, injustice on a large enough scale brings strength, freedom, and mastery. The just man is consistently a loser. He pays more in taxes, he loses out in private contracts, and he suffers in public office because he refuses to exploit his position.
I am just not convinced by that line of reasoning because it fundamentally misunderstands the nature of power. But let us look at exactly how this manifests. You suggest that the ruler, the one who wields power, does so entirely for their own advantage?
Absolutely. Thrasymachus points this out using the analogy of a shepherd. Think about what a shepherd actually does. Do you think a shepherd tends to his flock out of a deep moral concern for the emotional well-being of the sheep?
Well, no, they protect the sheep to maintain the flock.
Right, but for whose ultimate benefit? The shepherd does not fatten the sheep for the good of the sheep. He fattened them for the master's ultimate feast, or, to sell them for profit in the market.
I suppose that is true in agriculture.
The exact same logic applies to rulers of states. Whether it is a democracy passing tax codes or a tyranny demanding tribute, the ruling power makes laws entirely to serve its own interests. They define what is just based on what benefits them.
And punish the rest.
Right. And they punish anyone who breaks those laws as an unjust criminal. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy the Socratic view here. Let me tell you why. It ignores the empirical reality that justice is literally nothing else than the interests of the stronger. The stronger dictate the terms.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following your logic here. Are you saying that because rulers often exploit their subjects, exploitation is the actual definition of leadership?
I am saying that anyone with power uses that power to benefit themselves.
But that confuses two entirely different concepts. It confuses the actual art of ruling with what Socrates calls the art of payment. Let's use a modern example. Think of like a highly skilled surgeon running a private practice.
Okay.
The surgeon charges a massive fee for a heart bypass. But when that surgeon is actually in the operating room performing the surgery, what is the goal of the art of medicine in that exact moment?
To fix the heart.
Right. It is entirely focused on the healing of the patient's body. The art of medicine does not make the doctor healthier. It makes the patient healthier.
But the doctor wouldn't do it without the fee.
That doesn't change the nature of the art. The fee belongs to a completely separate art, the art of getting paid. If the doctor decided to do the surgery for free, the art of medicine would still function perfectly.
I'm sure technically.
Its sole focus is the perfection of its subject. True rulership is exactly the same. A true pilot acts for the safe navigation of the sailors. A true ruler acts for the welfare of the citizens.
So why does anyone rule, in your view, if there is no inherent benefit to them? It doesn't make any sense.
Out of fear. Truly good people actually refuse to rule for money or for honor. They see ambition as a disgrace.
Then why take public office?
The only reason a genuinely good person takes public office is because they face the ultimate penalty, the fear of being ruled by someone much worse than themselves. If they could avoid ruling, they would. They step up because they have to protect the system, not because they want to exploit it.
That assumes human beings are motivated by the perfection of some abstract art rather than basic self-interest. But let's test that. Let's pivot to human nature when it is stripped entirely of societal consequences. This is where Glaucon introduces the story of the ring of Gyges.
The invisible ring from our introduction.
Yes, Gyges is just a humble shepherd. After an earthquake, a chasm opens up, and he finds a hollow bronze horse containing a corpse. On the corpse's finger is a gold ring. Gyges takes it.
Naturally.
Later, while sitting around the fire with the other shepherds, he accidentally twists the collet of the ring, and he realizes he has become completely invisible.
Total freedom from consequence.
Exactly. It's the ultimate internet troll scenario, but in real life. When you remove face-to-face accountability, what happens? Gyges doesn't go back to tending his sheep.
No, he doesn't.
He immediately uses this power to infiltrate the court. He seduces the queen, he murders the king, and he seizes the entire kingdom for himself. Glaucon proposes that if you had two such magic rings, and you gave one to a supposedly perfectly just man and one to an unjust man, both would end up on the exact same path.
You really believe even the just man would become a murderer?
Absolutely. Because the only thing keeping the just man on the straight and narrow is the fear of being caught. Give him the ring, and he will take what he wants from the market, lie with anyone he pleases, and act like a god among men. Because humans are fundamentally driven by appetite.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it very differently. The ring of Gyges only proves what a person will do if their primary restraint is external reputation.
But reputation is the entire game.
It doesn't prove that breaking the rules makes them genuinely happy or whole, though.
But Glaucon provides the ultimate isolation test to prove exactly that. We have to isolate the variable of reputation to see what justice is actually worth.
How do you propose we do that?
We imagine two men. First, the perfectly unjust man. He is a master manipulator. He commits the greatest crimes. He embezzles, he ruins lives, but he maintains a flawless public relations campaign.
He never gets caught.
Never. He has a perfect reputation for justice. He reaps all the societal rewards. He's wealthy. He helps his friends. He destroys his enemies. And he even donates heavily to charities, so society loves him.
He has the rewards of justice without actually being just.
Exactly. Now look at the perfectly just man. He wants to be good, not to seem good. So we must strip him of his good reputation. Let him be falsely accused and thought of as the worst of villains, despite his pure soul.
Which is a brutal scenario.
It is. What is his fate? He is dragged through the mud. He is thrown in prison. He is scourged, racked, bound, and ultimately he is tortured to death. How can anyone possibly argue that the just man, suffering on the rack, is happier than the unjust man, feasting in his palace?
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. That incredibly stark isolation test only looks at external material rewards and physical circumstances. It completely ignores the internal mechanics of the human mind.
How does internal mechanics outweigh physical torture?
Because injustice is fundamentally a chaotic, destructive force. It is not a surgical tool you can just wield to get rich without it affecting your own psychology. Consider this. Even a band of robbers or thieves could not successfully steal if they were completely unjust to one another.
What do you mean? They're thieves. They're unjust by definition.
They are unjust to the outside world, but internally within their own gang, if they constantly betrayed, murdered, and robbed each other, they would achieve absolutely nothing.
Honor among thieves, basically?
Exactly. They require a remnant of justice, a basic level of internal harmony and rule following, just to cooperate and carry out their crimes. They have to split the loot fairly.
So you are saying that even villains rely on justice to function?
Precisely. Injustice creates divisions, hatreds, and fighting. Now take that exact same dynamic and plant it inside a single individual. If injustice exists within a person's soul, it doesn't suddenly change its chaotic nature.
It creates conflict.
It creates internal sedition. It sets the different parts of the human psyche at war with one another. The unjust person becomes an enemy to themselves, utterly incapable of true action or genuine happiness, no matter how much wealth they have.
So the wealthy man is secretly miserable?
Yes, the man on the rack may be in physical agony, but his soul is unified. He knows who he is. The tyrant on the throne is constantly looking over his shoulder, a slave to his own endless appetites, internally tearing himself apart.
I understand the logic, but internal sedition is incredibly difficult to observe or quantify. You are asking us to believe in an invisible harmony of the soul that somehow overrides the very visible reality of a man being tortured.
I completely acknowledge the difficulty of seeing justice clearly in the invisible soul of an individual. It is like trying to read incredibly small letters from a distance. If you can't read the small print, what do?
You blow up the font size.
So let us read the larger letters first. Let us construct a state in theory, Calipolis, an ideal city, to see justice on a macro level.
Enlarging the letters, so to speak?
Exactly. A state arises out of necessity because no one is self-sufficient. I cannot grow my own food, build my own house, and weave my own clothes all at once. So we gather together partners. Justice in this state begins with the principle of specialization.
Meaning everyone has a specific job.
Right. One person doing the one job they are naturally suited for. The husbandman farms, the builder builds, the shoemaker makes shoes, and no one meddles in the business of others. When everyone performs their specific function, the whole society operates with health and harmony.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered that this simple, healthy state is completely contrary to actual human behavior? Glaucon challenges Socrates on this exact point. He calls this simple farming commune a city of pigs.
A bit harsh, but yes.
Well, it provides for bare necessities, grain, olives, cheese. But humans are not content with just surviving on basic rations.
You are referring to the expansion of desires.
Yes. Human desires inevitably push beyond necessities to luxury. We don't just want food, We want sweet sauces. We want comfortable sofas, perfumes, art, poetry, and dainties. We want more.
And Socrates concedes this. He calls it the feverish state.
Right. And once you admit those luxurious desires into the city, the original borders of your simple state are no longer sufficient. To support a luxurious lifestyle, you need more land. You have to take a slice of your neighbor's land for pasture.
Which inevitably leads to conflict.
It leads directly to war. And war, as you pointed out earlier with your specialization rule, is an art. It requires a specialized class of warriors. So now your city needs an army, the Guardians.
A necessary evil.
But here's the massive inherent danger of your system. You're creating a class of heavily armed, spirited men and women to guard the city. These Guardians are bred to be aggressive to outsiders. But what is to stop them from turning their weapons inward? What is to stop the guard dogs from turning into wolves and preying on the very citizens they're supposed to protect?
The danger of military tyranny is absolute. I don't disagree with that at all, which is exactly why the Guardians require a profoundly rigorous, censored education in music and gymnastics. If they are to be gentle to their fellow citizens but fierce to their enemies, their souls must be tuned perfectly.
Tuned how?
Well, we cannot allow young Guardians to hear stories from poets portraying the gods as deceitful, warring, or driven by lust.
You mean censoring the myths?
Yes, because a young mind cannot distinguish between literal and allegorical meaning. If a child sees gods acting unjustly, committing violence to get what they want, they will excuse their own vices. They will think, if the gods do it, why shouldn't I?
Right.
Furthermore, to prevent them from turning into wolves, the Guardians must live completely without private property. No gold, no silver, no private houses. They eat in common mess halls.
Let me stop you there. How do you possibly convince an entire society to accept this incredibly rigid class structure? I mean, how do you convince the shoemaker to just accept being a shoemaker forever?
And more importantly, how do you convince the heavily armed Guardian to accept a life of absolute poverty while protecting the wealth of the city? They have the weapons. They could just take the gold.
You have to lie to them.
It is not a malicious lie. It is a structural myth. It is often translated as the noble lie or the myth of the metals.
It is state-sponsored deception. You literally have to invent a mythological fiction to maintain this so-called natural justice. You tell the citizens a story that their youth and education were just a dream, that they were actually fashioned deep inside the earth, and that the Creator mingled different metals into their souls.
Gold for the ruling class, silver for the warrior auxiliaries, and brass and iron for the craftsmen and farmers.
Exactly. You use a fabricated religious decree to persuade everyone to accept their highly restricted, specialized role. If justice is such an inherent, beautiful, natural good, why does it require a massive propaganda campaign to implement? Doesn't that prove my point? People don't naturally want this.
It proves that human beings are not born perfectly rational. The noble lie is a vital structural myth to ensure harmony. It persuades everyone to accept their role, proving that true justice is this ultimate internal and societal order. And this brings us back from the state to the individual soul. The macro reveals the micro.
How does the myth of the metals explain the individual?
Because the three classes of the state perfectly mirror the tripartite structure of the human soul. Imagine the human mind like a corporation.
Okay, a corporation. The gold class, the rulers, represent reason. Reason is the CEO. It has the wisdom to see the whole picture and make decisions for the good of the entire entity. The silver class, the guardians, represent the spirit, our emotional drive, our courage, our sense of honor. They are the security force.
And the bronze and iron?
The massive workforce. They represent our appetites, our desires for food, drink, luxury, and money.
So the appetites are doing all the heavy lifting for survival.
Yes, but they are blind. If the appetites take control of the corporation, the company bankrupts itself chasing short-term pleasures. If the spirit takes control, the company gets into endless aggressive wars. True justice, internal justice, is when reason acts as the CEO, supported by the enforcers of the spirit, to govern and moderate the massive workforce of the appetites.
Right. When every part of the soul stays in its lane and does its proper job, the human being is healthy. That internal order is inherently profitable, regardless of what people think of you.
But the fact that you have to engineer such intense control mechanisms, censoring poetry, inventing myths of golden souls, it shows that mankind largely views your version of justice as a pragmatic, reluctant necessity.
I wouldn't say reluctant.
It takes immense force to keep reason in the CEO chair. The reality of human behavior leans much closer to the ring of Gyges. We are creatures of deep appetites. When left to our own devices in the dark, we do not naturally desire this rigid order. We seek what we want.
Yet notice that we both agree on a fundamental premise here. Human nature contains these deep, chaotic appetites and spiritedness. The rational part of us is constantly in tension with our desires. Where we converge is on the realization that profound education and structure are required to manage that tension.
Yes, on that we are entirely aligned. Whether you view justice as an internal harmony of the soul or as a pragmatic social contract designed to prevent mutual destruction, the appetites of humanity are dangerous. They require management.
And that reflects the enduring value of examining justice from both your pragmatic, external perspective and my idealistic, internal perspective. Navigating these two views unlocks much more to explore within the construction of the ideal city and the ultimate role of the philosopher king who has to step up and rule it.
It really forces us to ask what we are doing when we follow the rules every day. Are we acting out of a genuine desire for internal health? Or are we just looking over our shoulders, wondering if Jesus is watching, or if we will get caught?
Exactly. It brings us right back to our opening thought. We aren't just looking at a mechanical system. We are looking at an entity that must constantly choose to harmonize itself. We will leave that for you to weigh and form your own conclusion.